Want to get your head around Microsoft Azure, but maybe without needing a PhD first.
Yeah, it can seem pretty complex sometimes.
Exactly. Well, you're in the right place. Welcome to our deep dive. We've gone through, course intros, sign-up guides, lots of cloud explainers
The key stuff.
to pull out the essentials just for you.
Yeah, our goal today is pretty simple, really. We want to help you build a solid foundation for understanding Microsoft Azure.
Right.
We'll cover the basic ideas, the core concepts of cloud computing, and then actually walk through getting started with an Azure account. And importantly, why it matters.
Okay, let's dive into this cloud computing idea first. It sounds a bit, well, abstract. What does it actually mean for someone listening?
That's a fair question. So our sources explain it as basically delivering computing services. Things like virtual machines, storage, databases, even fancier stuff like AI.
Over the internet.
Over the internet, exactly. Think of it like choosing the power and storage you need for a computer, but instead of having that machine in your room or office,
It's in one of their big data centers somewhere.
precisely,
Yeah.
securely housed and managed by the provider, like Microsoft.
Okay. And I heard you mention payment earlier. How does that work? It's different, isn't it?
It really is. It's a consumption-based model. So you only pay for the services you actually use,
Oh.
which is a huge shift from, the old way of buying a ton of servers up front.
Right, spending loads of money hoping you bought enough or maybe too much.
Exactly. You avoid that big capital expenditure. Instead, it's operational expenditure, or OpEx. It aligns your costs much more closely with what you're actually doing.
And gives you flexibility.
Huge flexibility. Scale up when you're busy, scale down when things are quiet. You're only paying for what you consume moment to moment.
So no more guesswork.
Yeah.
But if Microsoft is running the data center, who's responsible for what? Like for security and keeping things running?
Yeah, that's the shared responsibility model. It's a key concept.
Okay.
In a traditional setup, you manage everything, right? Physical security, power, cooling, network, OS updates, patching, everything.
Yeah. The whole shebang.
The whole shebang.
Yeah.
With the cloud, it's split. Azure handles the physical stuff, the data center security, the power, the network infrastructure.
Okay, the building blocks.
Right. And then you, the customer, you're responsible for things like securing your data, managing who has access, and depending on the service type, maybe the operating system or application security.
So it depends on what you're using.
Exactly. It's not a one-size-fits-all answer. Which brings us nicely to the different service types. IA, PaaS, and SaaS.
Right, I saw those mentioned. Can you break those down? Like who does what in each case?
Sure. Think of it like a sliding scale of control and responsibility. At one end, you've got infrastructure as a service, or IA.
Okay.
Here, you get the most control, but also the most responsibility. Azure provides the basic infrastructure, virtual machines, storage, networks.
Like renting the hardware.
Pretty much, yeah. You manage the operating system, the software installs, network configuration, your applications. Everything on top of that basic hardware.
So good if I want to move an existing server setup to the cloud or for testing.
Exactly. That lift and shift scenario is a classic IS use case. Or detailed development and testing where you need full control.
Got it. Like an empty rented building where I install everything. What's next? Pass.
Right. Platform as a service, or PaaS. Here, the provider Azure manages more for you.
Okay.
They handle the underlying infrastructure, the operating system, maybe the database management system, development tools.
So I don't worry about patching the OS.
Correct. You just focus on building and deploying your application. Azure App Service is a good example. You upload your code, and Azure handles the servers, the OS, the scaling.
That sounds much easier for developers.
It definitely streamlines things, great for building web apps, APIs, or using things like analytic services without managing the plumbing underneath.
Okay, makes sense. And the last one, SaaS, software as a service.
Spot on. SaaS is where the provider manages pretty much everything. You're just using the software.
Like email or Office 365.
Perfect examples. You just log in and use it. Microsoft handles all the infrastructure, the application updates, the maintenance, everything.
So easiest to use, but maybe less flexible if I want to customize things.
That's the trade-off, exactly. You get a ready-made application, but you use it as provided.
Okay. IS, PaaS, SaaS. That spectrum makes sense. Now, what about where this cloud stuff actually lives? Public, private, hybrid?
Right, those are the deployment models. They define who uses the infrastructure. A private cloud is just for one organization.
Like their own personal cloud.
Essentially, yeah. More control, maybe perceived higher security, but often more expensive and less scalable than public options. It could be on their own premises or hosted by someone just for them.
Okay. And public.
Public cloud is what most people think of with Azure, AWS, Google Cloud. It's infrastructure owned by the provider, and anyone can sign up and use it. Shared infrastructure, but logically separated for each customer, of course.
Gotcha. Shared facility, but everyone gets their own locked room. What about hybrid?
Hybrid cloud just combines public and private clouds.
Best of both worlds.
That's the idea. Maybe keep sensitive data private, but use the public cloud for, say, web servers that need to scale up and down a lot. Gives you flexibility.
And I saw multi-cloud mentioned too.
Yeah, multi-cloud is becoming more common. That just means using services from multiple public cloud providers.
Like using Azure for some things and maybe AWS or Google for others.
Exactly. Maybe one provider has a specific AI service you like, or maybe you just don't want all your eggs in one basket.
Seems like managing all that could get tricky though. Different clouds, maybe stuff still on my own servers.
It absolutely can. And that's where tools like Azure Arc come into the picture.
Azure Arc.
Yeah, think of it as a bridge. It lets you manage resources servers, Kubernetes clusters, databases that might be running in Azure, on other clouds, or even in your own data center, on premises, all from a single control plane within Azure.
Oh, okay. So one dashboard to see everything.
That's the goal, a unified management experience. And similarly for companies heavily invested in VMware.
Which is a lot of companies.
It is. Azure VMware Solution lets them move those existing VMware workloads into Azure more easily without a complete re-architecture.
Handy. Okay, one last fundamental. CapEx versus OpEx. Capital and operational expenditure, how does that relate?
Right. So CapEx is buying assets, upfront servers, buildings, software licenses, big initial cost.
Like buying a house.
Kind of, yeah. OpEx is paying for things as you use them, like rent or utilities. It's an ongoing operational cost.
And cloud is?
Cloud is primarily OpEx. You're paying for the computing services you consume each month, not buying the underlying hardware.
Fits that consumption model we talked about.
Perfectly. No big upfront hit, more predictable budgeting aligned with usage.
All right, I think I've got a decent handle on the concepts now. Let's get practical. How do I actually sign up for Azure? Walk me through it.
Okay, sounds good. It's not too bad. First step, just head over to azure.microsoft.com in your browser.
Azure.microsoft.com.
Got it. You'll see buttons like Get Started or maybe Free Account. Sometimes there's even a QR code you can scan. Look for the option that says something like New to Azure. Start free.
Okay, click Start Free. Then what?
It'll ask you to sign in. You'll need a Microsoft account.
Like for Outlook.com or Xbox?
Yeah, those work. Or Hotmail, OneDrive, any of those. If you don't have one, you'll need to create one quickly. It'll guide you through that.
Okay, signed in. Now it's asking for profile info.
Yep. Name, email, phone number, address, just the usual stuff. One small tip, watch the phone number format. Sometimes it asks for the number without the country code first. They asked for the code separately for verification. Just read the instructions carefully there.
Good tip, thanks. Okay, details filled in, verification next.
Usually, yes. They need to verify it's really you. You'll typically get a choice text message or phone call.
Okay.
They'll send a code, you type it in. Simple enough. Then you'll likely confirm your address details.
Done. Almost there. Feels like it.
Pretty much. Next up is the customer agreement. You know, the terms and conditions. You'll need to accept that.
The fine print.
Always read the fine print. And you can choose if you want marketing emails or not. Then the credit card part.
Ah, okay. Do I get charged immediately?
No, not for the free trial. When you sign up, you usually get a bunch of free credits like Azure Funny Money to use for a certain period, often 30 days.
Oh, cool. So I can actually try stuff out.
Exactly. You can spin up virtual machines, try storage, databases, whatever, using those credits. You won't be charged unless you go over the free limits or the trial period ends.
What happens then?
It converts to a standard pay-as-you-go account. So you only pay for what you use beyond the free stuff.
Okay.
But it's strong. It's really important, like our sources emphasize, to check the pricing for specific services you plan to use. Use the Azure pricing calculator online. Get a feel for the costs before your free trial runs out.
Good advice. Any way to stop myself from accidentally spending a fortune?
Yes, definitely. Once you're in the portal, you can set spending limits and budget alerts. Highly recommended. It'll warn you if you're approaching your set limit.
Smart. Okay, credit card info, and what's the very last step?
Just review everything, scroll down, and hit the sign up button.
Click.
It'll take a few moments to set up your account. You might get asked for feedback on the sign up. Then you should land in the Azure Quick Start Center.
Quick Start Center.
Yeah, it's like a welcome area. Has intro videos, links to tutorials.
Yeah.
Worth spending a few minutes there just to get oriented.
Okay.
Then Usually in the top left, you'll see the main Microsoft Azure link or logo. Click that, and you're in your Azure dashboard.
The main control panel.
That's the one. Your central hub for everything Azure.
Fantastic. Okay, I'm hypothetically in. Signed up, looking at the dashboard. Now sell me on why I should actually use these Azure services. What are the big wins?
Okay, let's talk benefits.
Yeah.
First up, high availability.
Meaning things stay running.
It's exactly. Keeping your applications accessible with minimal downtime. Azure does this with lots of redundancy, automatic failover if something breaks, load balancing to spread traffic.
Yeah, it's robust.
It is. And they back this up with service level agreements or SLAs, guarantees of uptime.
Like 99.9% uptime.
Yeah, you'll see percentages like 99%, 99.9%, 99.95%, even 99.9% uptime. But be aware that even 99% uptime still allows for like almost 1.7 hours of downtime a week.
Oh, wow. That's more than you'd think.
Right, whereas 99.9% is maybe 10 minutes a week. Higher availability usually costs more, but you choose the level based on how critical your application is. Each service has its own specific SLA.
Okay, availability is crucial. What if my app suddenly gets really popular, like overnight viral success?
That's where scalability shines. It's the ability to adjust your resources automatically to meet demand.
So my viral app doesn't crash.
Hopefully not. Azure can automatically add more computing power, memory, or instances of your application to handle the spike.
And then scale back down when things quieten down.
Precisely. Scale up, scale down. And because you pay for what you use, you're not paying for that peak capacity 24/7.
That makes sense. There are different ways to scale, right?
Yep. Vertical scaling is making a single resource more powerful, like adding more RAM or CPU to a virtual machine. Horizontal scaling is adding more resources, like adding more virtual machines to a pool. Scaling out, we call it.
Got it. Grow taller or grow wider. What about if something just breaks? A server fails.
That brings us to reliability. It's about recovering from failures and keeping things functioning.
Okay.
The cloud is designed for this. Resources are often spread across different physical locations, even different geographic regions.
Right.
If one part fails, often the system can automatically switch to a healthy replica somewhere else.
So less chance of a single failure taking everything down.
Much less chance, yeah. Built-in resilience.
Okay, availability, scalability, reliability. What about predictability? That was mentioned too.
Right, predictability covers two main areas, performance and cost.
Performance predictability.
Ensuring your users get a consistent experience. Using tools like auto-scaling and load balancing helps predict and manage the resources needed for smooth performance, even when demand fluctuates.
Makes sense. And cost predictability.
Being able to forecast your spending. Azure gives you tools to track usage in real time, monitor costs, analyze spending patterns.
So no nasty surprises on the bill.
That's the aim. You can use things like the total cost of ownership, or TCO calculator, even before you start, to estimate costs compared to running things yourself.
Very useful. Okay, let's talk security and governance. Big topic. How does Azure help there?
Hugely important. Azure has tons of security features built in. You can use templates to deploy resources that automatically meet your company's policies or industry regulations.
So ensuring compliance.
Yes, and there are auditing tools to flag anything non-compliant. Plus, depending on the service model like PayOS or SaaS, Microsoft handles security patches and updates automatically.
Ah, back to the shared responsibility.
Exactly. Your level of control and responsibility varies. IaaS gives you the most control over security settings, SaaS the least, because the provider handles it. And there's protection against things like DDoS attacks, too.
Distributed denial of service, trying to flood my site with traffic.
Yep, helps protect against those.
Okay. And lastly, manageability. Is it easy to run all this stuff?
They try to make it as easy as possible. Think automatic scaling, deploying whole environments from templates, infrastructure as code, health monitoring that can automatically replace failed components.
Proactive stuff.
Yeah, and alerts based on metrics you define. Plus, you can manage Azure through different tools. The web portal we discussed, command line interface, CLI, APIs for automation, or PowerShell scripting.
Lots of options depending on how you like to work.
Definitely caters to different preferences and needs.
This all sounds really powerful. Now, for someone starting out feeling maybe a little overwhelmed still, our sources mentioned an Azure Fundamentals Learning Path.
Yes, that's a great resource. It's a collection of free online courses directly from Microsoft.
For beginners.
Perfect for beginners, yeah. Or even if you have some IT background, but are new to Azure specifically. It covers cloud concepts generally, and then Azure services and management.
Good for getting the basics down solid.
Absolutely. And it's structured to help you prepare for the AZ-900 Azure Fundamentals Certification exam, if that's something you're interested in.
AZ-900, what does that cover?
It tests you on three main things: understanding cloud concepts, describing Azure's architecture and key services, and understanding Azure management and governance tools. It can even be a good first step towards other certs like the AZ-104 Administrator one.
So a really valuable next step after listening to this.
For sure. A great way to deepen the knowledge.
All right, let's try and pull this all together. We've covered a lot in this deep dive.
We definitely have.
We started with what cloud computing actually is, looked at the benefits: availability, scalability, reliability.
Predictability, security, manageability.
Right. We walked through signing up for Azure, step by step,
Demystified that shared responsibility model.
and broke down the differences between IaaS, PaaS, SaaS, and the different ways clouds can be deployed: public, private, hybrid.
And we pointed towards the fundamentals learning path as a next step. The aim was really to give you that solid, clear base understanding of Azure.
Without getting lost in the weeds. Hopefully we hit that mark.
Hopefully.
So, as we finish up, here's something for you, the listener, to think about. Based on what we've discussed, which of those service models, IaaS, PaaS, or SaaS, feels like it might be the best fit for something you might want to do, a project you have in mind, or just your general needs?
Yeah, pondering that is a great way to start applying this knowledge and exploring what Azure can offer you specifically.
Definitely something to mull over. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into Azure fundamentals.